All right, everyone. This is Jeff St Laurent, and this is the live Tuesday call. And I am off my rocker today, and I'm not even in a rocker, so that might be it might be really cool. But no, I'm super excited because I've got a great I call him a friend too, but a great mentor and client of mine, Marc Cordon today, and I'm going to bring him on in a second. And just really excited because I've been working with him for, I would say, over the last year or so.
Yeah.
And he's just really gone from like doing everything to focusing, and the best part is not only is he just moving his business forward, but he's getting paid. And I wanted to bring him on because I just wanted you to experience his energy, but kind of more also to hear like the journey that he's been on, and not only some of the challenges he's been through, but what is he doing and what is he doing now to actually create income for himself, because he's doing it full time. And that's what I do, is I help coaches transition to a full-time business. And so that's why I want to bring Marc to you guys today, so you can benefit from his expertise and learn from what he's doing, so you can start to do this with yourself as well. So people will be calling in, and I do record all these calls, and I post them in the Selling Coaching University on my website, sellingcoaching.com. If you haven't checked out that resource, it's awesome, if I can say that myself, right? But go to the university there. We're up well over 100 calls now, and we're not stopping there. So check out the university. Also on the homepage of my website, sellingcoaching.com, I have a great resource called the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. So you can put your name and email in there. You'll get that guide immediately. And then additionally, that's going to put you in my email community. And I want you in my email community because not just I want you getting my emails, but number one, I want you to be involved with my community. I want to stay in touch with you. I want you to see how I utilize my email community to stay in touch with my audience, because this is what you deserve and need to be doing in your business via email. And that's one thing that Marc's going to talk about today. I know that he does really, really well is as he'll coin the phrase hugs, right, Marc?
Yeah.
We'll get into that as we go along, but that's how we get you to use our email community there. But so right on sellingcoaching.com, check out that free resource. And then lastly, as a great community builder, right at the top of my website, sellingcoaching.com, I've got a great private Facebook group. We're steadily growing that each and every week. It's a great place for us to stay a little bit more connected as well, and I'd love to invite you to check that out. But I don't want to talk anymore because I want to bring Marc on. We've had a bunch more people calling in, so this is going to be a packed house, and I want to welcome Marc. So welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. It's awesome.
It's great to have you, man. Absolutely. And Marc is like the rebel. He's like the guy who's just like, he just does it his own way. And this dude's smart. Like, Marc, you've always impressed me with what you've done. He's now an author of the book. What's the title of your book?
Beyond Resilient, Coach's Guide to Static Growth. Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about that later, and he's also going to tell you guys how you can get a free copy of that as well. I endorsed that book. I gave him a testimonial for it. I read the book. Awesome book. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I want to bring you in, Marc, and just as we start off, just give us a little snapshot of kind of like who you are, obviously as a person, but kind of like where you started off with your coaching journey, because we've all had that place that brought us to coaching. So I just kind of want a brief piece of, just so they can get a feel for who this guy Marc is and what brought you into wanting to do coaching as a business.
Yeah, totally. So I was in higher education for 14 years, y'all. First 7 of those years, I was doing things like putting on these great events, retreats, those sort of things, and that was kind of cool because we started getting money from Google and grants here and there. And every couple of years you start getting an itch. You start thinking about, what might my next step be? And the thing that happened was that Emory, the institution I was working for, offered me basically a blank sheet. And I'm like, what are you guys doing with this? And they're like, you get to create your next job. And it was in health, and I was like, oh, my gosh, I don't want to be the guy that puts, like, condoms on bananas in the sorority lodge, Like,
yeah.
So, like, I came back, and I was like, hey, if we really want to talk about some stuff in health, let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about, let's create some sort of advising program, and let's make it real fun. Let's make it real fun. And so at that point, I wouldn't say that I was a mental health advisor, but definitely a lot of students, it was like a revolving door of students coming in, just sort of wanting the space to talk about what their options could be or what their passions are, where they wanted to go, those sort of things. And I was like, this is absolutely great. And I applied for IPEC and got in because I thought it would supplement my my career there. But then there was one sort of changer there, Jeffy. There was one changer. I was meeting with an alum, and he said, look, Mark, I've gotten everything I've ever wanted from the college experience. I got every grade. I got every class I wanted. I got the first job I wanted. I got, now here I am in New York City, 7-figure job. And I'm like, that's great, man. And he's like, it sucks because I'm blowing it on cocaine and hookers every night. And it really dawned on me that some of the things that I was doing in my coaching program really could have benefited this person if I would have applied that when he was in college. It could help him now as well if he wanted that. So I started to see things larger than 18-year-olds looking for happiness. And that's really when sort of becoming a life coach, sort of a performance coach and someone who's focused on positive psychology really started to happen. And, it was cool because I had a 2-year plan, but what wasn't cool for the university was I had a 2-year plan. I knew I was on the way out. Right. So, there was really nothing they could do to the happiness guy at my last couple days there. And, it ended up that left the university. 2 days later, I flipped the switch, and MarcCordon.com was live, and we were beginning to get in the first semblances of clients. But that's not the same thing as what we're talking about here. The money wasn't coming in yet, but that was the very beginning of when I knew that I was going to be a coach.
Yeah, and so when that transition or that started, give us a time frame, how long ago was that?
Yeah, good question. So that was October 2016. What is it, 17 or 18 right now? Yeah, it's October 2016. It wasn't very long ago.
Yeah, so we'll call it a year and a half because October this year would be the 2-year mark. And when you said you gave yourself a 2-year plan, that was the 2-year plan for what specifically?
Well, I gave myself a 2-year plan to get out of the school that I was in. And I also had a 1-year plan to do well in terms of I had this nest egg that I was sitting on that would sort of be the resource that would help me in terms of getting the coaching piece off the ground.
Gotcha. So you gave yourself a time frame for your business.
Yeah, it was about a year, and I think when I met you, we extended it by another 6 months. So it was about 18 months to turn around a business in life coaching. Yeah.
So now let's talk about the early days of your business. It sounds like it's so long ago, right? But
should we?
So you're starting it, talk about where you were at mentally, because this is important for people listening to this, right? Because people are all different levels, but I think in some ways it's validation, maybe for if they're feeling that way. But talk about obviously before we started working together, what were you doing? What were you trying? What were you just confused with, if you will? Because you were doing a lot of stuff when I met you.
Yeah, and I would say that what I was doing when we first met was total mimicry. I was looking at what other coaches were doing, and I was mimicking their styles. Here's a person with Infusionsoft. Let me go and reverse engineer how he is getting sales through that. Here's a person that's creating a video series and webinars and all that good stuff. So let me sort of break down what it is that they're doing. And it was a lot of mimicry at the beginning, Jeff. I would say that, Jeff, I don't know if you remember, but I told you, like, I feel like a coach that sings like karaoke songs right now. Like, I feel like I'm singing someone else's song, and like the big thing I wanted to work with you, Jeff, on was this idea of I want to find my own voice, and it's not going to come from mimicry. It's not going to come from following other people's templates. It's not going to come from clicking on another ad that says I'm going to make six figures in X amount of time. It's going to come from me knowing what it is that I stand for, who my ideal client is, and just the day in and day out. I mean, we came up with this term, but day in and day out, pounding the rock, like just doing the same things day in and day out. It doesn't. There's nothing sexy about my story, y'all. But things start to turn around. But that's how it was at the very beginning. It was very much, I was looking at these different autoresponders and all that stuff. you know, I even had a ghostwriter, and Jeff wanted to slap me for having a ghostwriter.
Yeah, because here's the thing, right? So Mark comes to me, and here's this guy who's, like, technology-wise, like I work with a lot of coaches, and they're just like, oh my God, you know, getting on email alone is just like, oh my, it's a lot in technology. And then here's this guy Mark, who's just like you said, getting on Infusionsoft, which if you don't know what that is, call it a very expensive $300 a month like software program that's like you need a college course just to understand it, right? And it has its place, right? It has its place. But like you said, you were modeling a lot of different people at higher levels in some ways.
Absolutely.
And he's doing all this technology stuff, and it's all this. And here's this guy who, as you get to know Mark, and hopefully you'll get a copy of his book later on, and check out his website, and we'll give you more of that, as we go through this. But as you get to know more about Mark, like he's his own voice. And I remember slapping him, like, dude, you need to talk about you, and just not you, but like just people need to hear your message, not like a canned someone else doing this for you,
Yeah.
And what did that do for you? Because I remember that was a turning point. I could see a shift in you afterwards.
Well, I think that was something that it was a gremlin of mine, right? Sort of this idea that if I do things my own way, who's going to listen to the redhead Asian, with all these other like millions of people who are doing it well, right? And what the hell would I possibly have to say? And so there were definitely those gremlins, but I remember when you said, like, there's something about you, dude, follow it. I just started writing my own stuff, It was around the same time that, like, I was like, you know what? I should probably get on camera and do some things, And even of itself, like, for those of you who remember the first time you went live, it was probably pretty terrifying. And, as an introvert and someone who has a lot of anxiety, like, it was completely terrifying to do that. But there's this idea that Jeff and I always talked about, pound the rock. Like, if my, if my awareness campaign is getting in front of the camera, pound the rock, do it every single day. And I think that's one thing that's helped me out a lot with working with Jeff, is sort of this monkey brain that I've got, right? Oh my gosh, nobody is responding to my, my Facebook Lives. And Jeff would be like, how many have you done? 3? Jeff's like, 18 months. 18 months, then tell me like how things are going after you've done that, right? So, like, I think he's really helped me with sort of, I kind of owned up that, like, I've got these millions of entrepreneurial ideas to do a bunch of whole things, a bunch of wild things, but Jeff has helped me take those and, like, kind of put these in a bento box. And when I get a chance to get to them, I'll get to them. But the fact of the matter is I've got to do my Facebook Live show after I get off this call with you, Jeff, and that's part of my awareness campaign. And I think doing those things day in and day out have been the things that are showing a lot of return right now. You know, I used to think that it would be like spend a lot of money on Kajabi, spend money on this, spend money on that, and then you're going to come off as this very high-class, uppity coach that people will want to gravitate towards. The fact of the matter is I'm doing much better right now, like turning on a Facebook Live and interviewing people, you know, and it takes a little bit of time, but now I feel like I'm much closer to writing and singing and performing my own songs rather than mimicking other people. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. Yeah, you've over the last year or so, you've started to really find your own message in your own voice, as you said. But more importantly, you've found comfort and confidence in your own message. Because especially now, you're starting to see it pay off because people are hiring you and you're getting business.
Yeah, it's paying off, dude. It's cool.
That's a big difference. It's one thing in the early stages, and people listen to this because I have a lot of coaches, you know, clients that I'm working through, and they're starting to go through the grind. And when Marc says pound the rock, right? And he's mentioned this a few times, but I'm tying some of these points together for people here. It's coming up with a system, and that's sort of I'm helping people do, right? But you come up with a system, and it's not all these things. It's one thing. It's one system, and you do that. That's pounding the rock every single day, every single week, week in after week out. Consistency, what I'm hearing from you is you're starting to see payoff.
Absolutely. I mean, absolute, I wouldn't say absolute payoff, but there are numbers, and I think I talked to you at the beginning of the year, Jeff, that I would never think that I would be in, 5 figures in January, and like we were having this moment together, you know, where you were like, yeah, dude, you leveled up, man. And it was almost like you expected me to get there, you know, and I think that was my own gremlin of things because I had been doing things for such, you know, for a full year, a little bit more than that. You start off and you're like, dude, I'll just take whoever I can to get a coaching client right now. And then after that, you're like, oh, I'll just give, you know, let's go $50, you know, let's see what happens with that. Then all of a sudden this idea of packages comes into play. The idea of having long-term clients comes into play. And then the idea of like, what is a selling point that is going to provide a transformation and more so someone it's edgy enough so that someone doesn't want to skip out, you know, because that was one of the first things that I learned. Like if I give it away for free, nobody will show up. If I sell it for $1,000, everybody shows up, you know, and so having that kind of confidence. And then also having a little system in terms of making money. Okay, I started off at $775. That was my price point. But every 10 people that I got, I increased it by 150, you know, to the point where it's a couple $1,000 now, you know, and I'm still increasing it. And it doesn't feel like I'm going through this like, oh, my gosh, this is what should be the price point. You know, it's like, no, I started there and it still feels like the same type of transformation. You know, that's the number that I started off with.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So let me hear this. So let's talk more specifics now, right? So people are hearing, you know, you started off and you're kind of doing everything, and to highlight that one last time before we get into the specifics is, you know, you're doing everything, but what you weren't doing was giving them yourself, number one, right? You were giving them automation, and you weren't giving them yourself. And to top it up, it really wasn't even your voice because you were like ghostwriting stuff and things like that.
No, it was horrible.
Right?
Yeah.
So then I'm like, I remember saying like, you need to give them Marc. Like they need to see Marc. Like you're the brand, you're the message, right? So So we start to shift that. So talk about some of the specific things when you say pound the rock and hugs, giving my audience hugs, like they say that a lot, right? So talk about some of the specifics in the system that we help you develop so people can start to see, like, what is this consistency that he's talking about?
Yeah. Well, in terms of giving them Marc, I think that was something that was a real switch towards things, and that was really a time where I was like, yeah, I can really talk about vulnerabilities, and you know what, I'm a dad, and so like, it's not like I'm trying to use my kid to like sell coaching, but like when I get off of these calls, like I go play with my son, you know what I mean? And so like all these things started to come into play when it came to my Monday pound the rock emails that I would send out. I would very much send out these emails that they're real life. They're real life, and it shows how coaching applies to it, or selling coaching applies to it. So I remember when the hurricane came through, and I had a huge presentation. I think you remember this, Jeff. A huge presentation in California, and I got stuck in Tampa. And so the next day, I just went and wrote like what it was like to be like fishing. Like we literally had fishing poles, and we were like pulling out like lawn chairs with fishing poles. And I was talking about how, as a positive psychologist, it doesn't get better than this. I could be focusing on this, I could be focusing on that, but like you really helped me with understanding how to take content and use it for story form. And so like I'm sure that you brought this up before, but the know, like, and trust factor sort of became automatic when I just started telling people stories of things, but also interjecting things about positive psychology. Like I didn't come in and say, hey, Nemec 2017 would say that blah, blah, blah. No, it was just like, yeah, my back hurt, man. Like, so there was that. And I think the other thing is once I got comfortable with being myself, there was this idea that like, hey, we finally connected, broski. Like, we're on the call together. How exciting is it that we're going to talk about your ideal life, right? Dead air.
Exactly.
And I'm like, what's up? What's up? And like, I'd ask my friends, and they're like, man, you sound like one of those guys who sells those like Kitco knives, like door to door, like you sound like you sound really salesy there. And so the idea of hugs was like, rather than interacting with somebody and saying, why don't you like jump on board and pay me $2,000 and let's have an awesome time, and you won't even know how amazing this will be. I do, like that kind of thing. Like every week, very consistently, I provide them little nuggets of like happiness, I guess, little nuggets of wisdom in those little stories, Now my awareness strategy has grown a little bit to the point where on my Facebook Live, I will interview someone, you're tomorrow, but like I will interview someone who has a very particular life. And so the idea of hugs has kind of gone Hugs 2.0 with me now, where it's these things like emails that, these things like the Golden Mike Live. And the thing is, I do not expect anything except for a few new subscribers every single time. And with those few new subscribers, I don't try to get up in them and like figure out their life, or I don't Facebook stalk them. I just want to know what they're about.
Yeah.
And when the time comes, if they know very clearly what it is that I do, I might be the very, very, very guy for the dilemma that they're in, and to possibly make that call and create a coaching relationship. So it's very much like it's very much like playing long ball with people, versus like you meet them, then you want to get married to them type of thing, you know. I think one day you and I were talking about how, like, this is not the Tinder of coaching, you know,
Exactly.
like you have to, like, really, really, really take your time when you know that it's the right client. So I think the hugs thing and give them Marc, those two things come in tandem. Like when I spent time becoming a little bit more authentic, shooting from the hip, and then also at the same time, there's a certain amount of like slowing things down with the way that you interact with your possible leads. I mean, who out there wants a grabby like person as a possible coach? You know, who wants that? You know, and so just to flip it on the other side, like, yeah, nobody wants somebody who's grabby like that and wants you to make that kind of commitment that fast. So I'm glad that was something that I worked on. And what's happening now is that there's literally, and Jeff told me this would happen, literally there are people who I was nice to, and there's people who I would follow their calls up with a few years ago, and then we kind of fell out. But they're still on my email list. They just found out I did a book. All of a sudden they want my coaching. And it's like 2 years later, you know. So you can have sales cycles if you want, you know, where you take someone in, lead, boom, boom, boom. But also at the same time, she's a heavy hitter, this client, when it comes to what she wants to accomplish, the gremlins she has, and the amount she's willing to pay for those services. And that had nothing to do with me trying to marry her, you know. It was just about the hugs. And so that happened that way. And I'm getting a lot of referrals based on that as well.
Yeah, so I'm hearing from you is like, number one, you got to stay in the game. You've been in the game now a year and a half, and you're not slowing down. You're only speeding up and getting better as you go.
Yeah.
But also the way your approach to being in the game is now a lot different. Is that you're actually in the game yourself.
Yeah.
And the content you're delivering now, like you said, they're the hugs, they're the stories. It's the story about your child or playing, or just it's those everyday things that are just make you real versus the markety type flashiness that people just would expect from an autoresponder or an automated email. There's no person on the other line writing it right now live.
Yeah, I mean, I think for some people that would work. You know, this is just me speaking, and that stuff is a bunch of bunk. You're paying extra for those things. You're paying extra for those things to help pay for their entreport. You know, so like I think in terms of coaching right now, a lot of people think the more you pay for a coach, the better the coach, and that's not really the I haven't seen that happening. I mean, I've seen some very, like, high-level coaches, and it takes multiple years to meet them. Like, you have to go through these programs and CDs and trips and stuff like that. Like, and if you want just straight-up coaching, think about what it is that you want, and then there's probably a coach that can do that for a really, really good price, and it doesn't even feel like you're shopping around. It's more so like you're finding that right partner for you. And when you do, like, luckily I found the selling coaching program, like, it explodes.
Yeah, Marc, talk about now. We talked about the process of, like, just getting your message and dialing in your message and having the confidence in you and getting some consistency in terms of what you do each and every week and going, if you will, less automated and more, I mean, you're still automated in the sense of you're using technology, but you're staying in front of your people with live emails and live events, right? And it's consistent each and every week. But then now you, and then you're giving yourself more of you and your message. So now we get to the other side. This is the part of like the actual conversion now. So you're not jumping on people, right? You're not the Tinder. Now you're going more towards the long term. Let's date, right? Let's get to know each other a little bit. And so now you're building relationships. You're building relationships with your audience. You're seeing the effects long term with set-aside clients, referrals, people coming to you when the timing's right and they're ready.
Yeah.
So now the part where you get paid is you're doing all this, because I remember now the part where we worked a lot now is actual conversion. It's like, okay, well, how do I handle these conversations, right? Like, talk about that process for you, because obviously this is what I love to teach the most, and now you're having a lot more success with this. But I know that it was a process for you.
Oh no, I mean, you're saying that very nicely. Like what I would come to like Jeff and say is be like, Jeff, man, like I cannot sell crap. Like there's like something weird. Like I feel very strong about what I do, but then at the end of the day, I can't sell crap. And I think one of the things that I've learned from working with Jeff is that there's two identities that we have when we're coaching entrepreneurs, as coaching entrepreneurs. The first one is the identity of a life coach or a coach in general. We might have all the skills there, right? And that's the first identity. The second identity is the identity of the business owner, the person that has to generate leads, the person that has to close sales. And so I felt like very early on, like, okay, I got my voice. Now all of a sudden, let me switch to this other identity, and I have no idea how to do it. I remember, like, Jeff and I would talk about things, and I'm like, Jeff, I never asked anybody out to prom, much less like ask somebody to give me like $3,000, So I think that there's a couple things that came to mind. The first one was this idea of creating momentum for yourself, right? Because it's one thing for like nobody to know who you are, but like many of us will do this on Facebook, or many of us will do this around our friends. So the idea of creating momentum and awareness, I have it broken down into three things in my business model, and if it's cool, I'll share it with you guys.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, so the first thing that I do is a Facebook Live, and I always have someone coupled with me. So I have a new stranger or a new friend with a different audience coupled with me. And my goal of that Facebook Live is to give that person 30, 45 minutes to tell the world what they do, but also to tell their stories. Like tomorrow we're going to be talking about little Jeff, like walking around when he was a kid, and what this has to do with him doing, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to have fun with it. But at the end of it, people become champions for not only my coaching, but more people will tune into that show. And so I've got about 5 people a day that I get to meet with now, in terms of like, oh, these are new people, I'm going to check in with them. Right? So there's a follow-up that's involved with those Facebook Lives. And the reason I call it awareness is because new people are learning about me, right? The second thing that I do in terms of awareness is that book, Beyond Resilience. So that book is going to be in newsstands on January 1st, 2018. Now, if you have a gremlin about a book, call me, because, like, you can get this done too. It's pretty simple to write a book. But they are such great leads in terms of getting people who are your ideal client to read something and then have your contact information at the end. So I definitely have that going on. And then the final thing is just this idea of other people's audience. And, so for example, with certain coaching companies, they've hired me to be a trainer in those companies. Now, the thing is, I don't pick off new clients from them, but they also are aware that I'm a pretty decent coach because I'm a trainer. And, like, I'm getting all these references from them, you know, or I'll get references from people who didn't make it into the program or didn't want to stay in the program but want coaching. So, like, all this stuff is coming together. And then the fourth thing is I'm currently doing a speaking tour right now. And it's like, if you're thinking like, hey, speaking tour, yeah, that's that kid again. He's spending all his money. No, I haven't spent any money on it. Like, I put something out there. I said, how can I keynote, or how can I do this? And they paid for my travel and my lodging. Now, while I'm there, I want people to know that I am the positive psychology coach. I want to meet other people. Just last weekend, I met an Olympic swimmer who's coming on my show, and that lends even more credibility to what it is that I'm doing. So I hope that helps. Like, it first starts with this awareness. Like, how are you doing awareness? Like, are you sporadically doing Facebooks? Are you doing things that is, they can't wait to see your Monday email? Like, your folks, your audience is waiting for you to say something. There's another person in this world that is waiting for you to say that everything's going to be better. So it would behoove you to put yourself out there in terms of the awareness campaign. So that's the first part. The second part is that these awareness campaigns are creating momentum for me. And I don't know if it's momentum or energy, but this idea that amongst my groups, that Marc is the guy to go to when it comes to coaching. When it comes to coaching, like, I know this guy, he's super wild, he's super educated, he'll get the stuff done, he won't overcharge you, and in fact, he'll try to get it done quicker than you ask. Like, he'll try to get you in and out. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. Like, with all of this awareness campaigning, it seems like there's a lot of folks that are now jumping on board and saying, okay, he's done it for a year straight. He must mean business. And not only has he done it for a year straight, but, like, now he's doing these shows, he's traveling. I need to get with this person, and so when it comes to the actual sales call now, sales calls used to be like, person would add me, I would PM them, try to get them on a call, then it'd be very formulaic, tell me about your I don't know what kind of malarkey I did, but like, wave your magic wand and tell me what life would be like, and then it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. And almost like now, it's like when they get on the phone, they're ready. Like, there's no convincing involved. I don't know if that makes sense, Jeff.
Well, how about this? It makes sense to me, but we'll say for people, because I understand, because that happens to me. And what happens is all the touches you're giving with them, you're giving them yourself, you're giving value to them. Mm-hmm. You're all the lives, Facebook lives that you're doing, you're turning in the great content you're giving through your email. There are people that are consuming that, right? So what that's creating is that trust and that bond with you. And most of the time, you don't even know it's happening behind the scenes, because a lot of the times they're not just writing you back every time going, oh my God, I'm reading your emails, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
We don't get that feedback.
Yeah, and I think early on it was kind of frustrating, because I would write this wonderful prose, right? I write this wonderful story about how I got locked out, or they closed the gate for the plane because I needed to get a Chick-fil-A sandwich, right? It was so wonderfully written, and no one responded,
Yep.
And I'm like, what's the deal here? Like, no one wants me to be their coach. This sucks, and I wouldn't say that I was that catabolic, but it was frustrating, because to work in a place like higher education, you're used to a revolving door of students. You're used to that. And in this one, it's just like, oh my God, I have so much to give. Like, I have so much to give when it comes to this and it's still a deal, but like nobody wants to take it. And I think that was one of the hardest things when transitioning over. And so when the idea of Pound the Rock came, it kind of changed my mindset. It was like, it doesn't matter whether one person shows up or one person writes me back. Today, it doesn't matter that one person or three people were on my Facebook Live. I just know that collective, the collective shows are going to do really well. I mean, there was a day, Jeff, where we were up at 600 people live at once for one of those shows. So I just know it's going to happen. And I think without being like cocky or anything like that, it's just, there's just this knowing. And when you know, it makes life so much easier. There's less worrying. You know you're going to have clients. I know that when I open my box every morning, there's going to be someone that's emailing me about coaching services. I think things are going as planned at that 18-month, as we approach that 18-month mark.
Yes, exactly. And that's the confidence that you're hearing there. It's like, that's not cocky, Marc. That's or egotistical. That's confidence. That's being confident and proud of what you do. And that's why I want people to hear that, because I know that's where you're at, and that's where I want people to get to. But in order to get there, they've got to have that Pound the Rock consistency day in and day out, and without the gratification, without getting paid, without the feedback. And what they've got to do is they've got to trust the process. They've got to trust, if you will, the mentor. That's how I got here, man. The reason why I'm the mentor now is because I trusted my mentors.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And you trusted me, and you're trusting me continuously, right? So there's a bit of that, we just got to trust. But then it's doing the right things over and over again. And like we were just starting to say there, is you're building that behind-the-scenes stuff. So that library of information that you have, of your Facebook Lives, the videos you do, the emails that you have, that builds the value behind the scenes while you sleep. So when the timing is right, people come out of the woodwork, and there's no convincing, there's none of that stuff, and they're ready because they've been there. They've been a fan of yours.
Yeah, I mean, you can really feel it, and there's something. I do think that the first 10, 12, 6, 18 months of starting your coaching business, for me, it was probably the hardest 18 months ever. The type of discipline you needed. I was used to spending money in some ways, but with the nest egg, you spend it differently. And then there's just a part of you that knows, when I become more authentic about this, it's going to happen. And you don't even think about it anymore. You just do. Pounding the rock is, you either pound the rock or you don't, right? There's no judgment involved. And the fact that, it just happened day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, to the point where I'm looking at Jeff and I'm like, Jeff, I just finished a book, dude. And he's like, yeah, man, and then I kept pounding the rock. Jeff, I just had my first over $10,000 month, dude. Yeah, keep going. And then, we don't know just how limitless our potential is when we get out of our own damn way. Because I remember that day when Jeff told me to get in front of a camera, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't get in front of a camera. And I don't even remember what that was. But now, I'm actually doing pitches to the news to get in front of the camera. Not just Facebook. We're doing pitches for local news and stuff like that. And so this idea of pounding the rock is this most simple thing, but then the next thing you know, when you look up, you could be seeing yourself with new books, clients of your dreams. And it does start, I know you call it, taking the leap.
Yeah.
I call it throw your knapsack over the wall.
Nice.
Because right now, where a lot of people might be in coaching is that they're they've come to a place where they're very nice in terms of where they're being compensated, but they're completely unfulfilled. It's just like what Maslow said. What one can be, one must be. And like, you can choose to live in that life where it's a status quo and you might be regretting things at the end of your life, or you can take the leap. You can go and take that knapsack and throw it over the wall and make a declaration. It's scary as hell, but then the next step is, okay, what's the first rock that I pound? What's the next step that I take? And sustained, engaged action. As a positive psychologist, sustained, engaged action is the only way to ecstatic growth. Period.
Oh, Marc, this is awesome. I love hearing you. We're getting close to the end, and on that ecstatic growth part and the book part, tell people just briefly about your book and then how they can get a copy of that, because it's something they deserve to have.
Yeah, right on. So the book is, I'm really, really, really excited to give the book away to the folks in the Selling Coaching group particularly, because it was during my first 18 months and my conversations with Jeff that I would be writing things down in a notebook. Jeff, you remember me doing that? Like, you'd say something and I'd write like a little fifth grader. But that actually turned into a book. It turned into a book called Beyond Resilient, A Coach's Guide to Ecstatic Growth. And essentially it starts out with my own life. But more than that, it gives 8 positive psychology terms used that we can use to, like, create the dream business coaching of our lives without having to sacrifice the family time, without having to, like, live make your life a living hell. You can transition into it and love everything that you're doing, you know? And so that's what the book is about. I would be happy to give it out to anyone listening to this. Just email me, Marc, M-A-R-C, at marccordon.com, M-A-R-C at marccordon.com, C-O-R-D-O-N, and just put in, just put in Selling Coaching, and I'll send you the book. Or you can wait until January 1st when it's in newsstands everywhere. But, like, no, you're go check out the book now. You're going to have my email address, so, like, please hit me up. Let me know. There's a lot of coaches that I know right now that are using this to build their companies up, and then they go back and they use the positive psych techniques to actually coach their clients. So it's like this 2-for-1 special that you're going to get with it, and I certainly hope that you enjoy it. I'm more than happy to give it out, and Jeff, thank you for sort of being the inspiration to help me write this thing, man.
It's been awesome along the journey, and it feels like, even though we're so far into it, it feels like we still so much more to go, you know?
Yeah, we got some hills to climb, man.